After a couple rounds of thunderstorms, I'm going to try the Q&A one more time here. I don't know if the rain's going to hold off or not. I am not complaining about the rain. We are fortunately getting fairly timely rains here. Haven't had to water the entire garden in a couple months now. Actually, we did one time back in April, but since then we've gotten pretty steady rainfall about the right time. You know, a few of our perennials are definitely a few 100-degree days we had last week. I can see a couple more issues out here than we had when the open garden event happened, for sure. But this is the Sunday garden question and answer video. You can ask gardening questions in the comment section below this video, and we pick from those each week. I think Steph has written down 24, so I think I'll end up doing 24 this week. I think there's almost a full another question and answer videos worth of questions that have been written down as well. So at some point, you'll probably get 2 in a week. We'll probably do 2 in a week. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July. Happy Independence Day. It is Sunday. I think that was Friday, and now it's Sunday. I should have said it last week in last week's video, but I always forget about those holidays that are out in front a little bit when I'm filming these things. One thing we showed off plants and all kinds of things that people brought during the open garden, and you will have seen a video of us putting some of the plants in the ground, I think so, already, that were from that, and paintings and all kinds of things. But we found a salt and pepper shaker hidden in the garden in two different spots. They were in 2 different spots, so here's that. We found that since we shot those other videos, so thank you very much for hiding the salt and pepper shaker in the garden. Enjoyed that. And let's see, there's a woman's t-shirt coming this week. If you follow us over on Instagram at HortTube, I will put that up on Instagram, and then it'll be in next week's. I won't not be wearing the women's shirt, but it will be in next week's question and answer video for sure. It's a plant collector one. And then we introduced these 4 last week. This is the hosta collector one. There's a conifer, one that says conifer crew, one that's just HortTube with Jim Putnam. And what is the 4th shirt? Oh, the Griffin shirt. How'd I almost forget the Griffin has his own shirt now. So there you go. All right, so we're going to jump into some questions. Any of those kinds of things are over on our website at horttube.com, and there's a store link up at the top. There were a couple questions from last week about that. Let's see. Number 1, can a tree grow too fast? Will fast-growing trees have sturdiness as they get bigger and older? Pushing them too fast affect longevity? Yeah, I think so. That, you know, the faster a tree is growing, the less dense overall that wood is. I talked about that with cedars when Europeans got to the U.S. The old growth juniper virginiana, that they had grown at a very slow rate over a long time, and they were absolutely, I mean, the wood was dense, the wood lasted forever. The newer cedar, Juniperus virginiana, that's farmed is pushed, and so you can look at the rings on them and see the gaps in the rings where they're growing much faster now. That's almost certainly going to be a shorter lived tree. It's certainly a less dense overall tree. And I've talked about these oaks in the neighborhood recently, and I mentioned that a lot of them have reached 80 to 90 years, and they're starting to fall apart in various ways. You know, and somebody said, well, those trees live like 250 years, and yes, that's accurate, but think about in an urban setting, if you plant a row of green giants, that was one of the things they were talking about. They were asking about conifers. If you planted a row of green giants or a leyland cypress or some fast-growing conifer like an Arizona cypress, or any of these shade trees, and then you planted them in your garden and you think it's just like anywhere else, but it's not like anywhere else, because you're potentially irrigating your turf, you're fertilizing your turf, you're fertilizing the plants, you're keeping the plants mulched, you're protecting those plants from weeds and competition, and so you're speeding them up. So these oaks that would be, you know, if you came to the open garden and saw this white oak in the back garden, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is a giant tree. It is not that old in comparison to other oaks that would be that size. Because again, it's been in a situation where fertilizer and, you know, people have grown vegetable gardens around them and everything else, and it's sped them up over time, and we basically kept competition away from them. So, but does it shorten the life? Absolutely. These trees are at 90 years appear to be, you know, one after another dying off. And they were able to compete with being grown between sidewalks and, you know, and the street and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of crazy spaces. But the rate with which they grew seems to have definitely started to shorten their lives. Let's see. Somebody nicked an area of a graft on their Japanese maple. So down at the graft or below the graft, they nicked it. Is there anything they can do to help it? Should they wrap it? No, I definitely don't ever wrap any wound on a tree just because I don't want to trap any moisture in there. I don't want to do anything to potentially, you know, create a situation where, again, trapping moisture inside of it. I just want to leave that wound open. You know, it's best of luck kind of thing. I've had that, the hot blonde Japanese maple, it's raining on me a little bit, over there, squirrels have done damage to it twice down at the ground level, and thus far it's been able to heal itself over. For some reason they want to eat below the graft on that tree, but I just leave it open. I just leave those wounds open and let them heal on their own. I think that's the best plan overall. Let's see. And I'm here in the South with all this humidity. If I put something, let's say I put something over to shelter water from getting to it, water's still getting to it. I walked out the door with this camera and had to wait 20 minutes for the, you know, for the fog that went on the lens. You know, there's water on everything out here, even under the leaves, you know, just because it's so humid. So I don't think you're getting anything out of blocking water from getting to it, is my point. Water's getting in it regardless. You need to have it open so that it can dry out. All right, let's see. This person planned their paths wrong, and for access to their water hose, blocked access to pruning large plants. Any advice or for suggestions for creating paths? Well, that's the reason that in the 5-part video that starts this project off here in Raleigh, if you go back and look at that, I put the drone up above and I painted the paths on the ground. That's how important I think your path system is. It's number one for me in the planning of anything. I want to make sure that I can access both sides of the back garden. I had landscape jobs where only one gate was put in on a fence. And so I'm charging them an extra $5 a yard or more for mulch, you know, probably more than that, because I got to take it all the way around and around a patio and around a deck to mulch the side of the garden over here, because there's no flow to it. That if it was me designing it, I'm designing it to maintain it. I'm designing it for the joy of it, and you know, having little hidden trails and that kind of thing. But I'm also designing it to make sure that I can maintain it. Now, what do you do now? You may have to tear some things out. You may have to move some things around. Just because I put these paths in the way I put them in doesn't mean they'll always be like this. I may decide one day to put a path off the end of this. I left a spot on this patio right here to put a path through the middle of that bed if I wanted to. Every exit to this patio out here has stone. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that I put in. Currently, there's only 3 paths though leading off of the patio. Okay, but I put another one. I put another one right here. Right now, it's just to access this, you know, the bird feeder, but it could be to go through the bed if I wanted to eventually. But paths are number one in my opinion, as how are you going to maintain it in the future, and how are you going to get around the garden. Also, we talked about this a lot in the Learn to Garden video series, in Steph's planning videos and my conversational videos in there as well, is about the more paths you have, the more opportunity you have to stick interesting things in there. Little dwarf conifers and, you know, interesting perennials. And, you know, if you don't have that and you just have a big block that you're landscaping, you only have that one edge, okay? But as soon as I put a path through it, now I got the path edge as well to do interesting things. Okay, that was enough of that. Let's see, that was number 3. How do I overwinter small shrubs that are still in nursery pots, including cuttings that they rooted? They're in zone 4A. Do they need to be two zones hardier in order to leave them outside? I'll tell you, in the nursery business, if you're a nurseryman on the Gulf Coast, you'll see very little plastic down there. You know, there are hoop houses down there, but mostly it's propagation houses that they'll have under plastic. By the time you get to my area here in Raleigh, if you go to a nursery, you might see 15 to 20% of the nursery under plastic for the winter. By the time you get up to Ohio or wherever Connecticut, you're probably going to see 80 to 90% of their production under plastic in the wintertime. So that really the main thing is you want stuff to thaw out during the day. So where you're getting that cold, it's okay sometimes if the things that are super cold already in your area are freezing at night, but they really need to thaw out during the day. They need to have that water available to them during the daytime. And that's what growing under some sort of white poly plastic that you'll see most nurseries using in the wintertime. I don't want to use clear poly because that'll get too warm. I mean, you don't want to go from, negative 20 at night or negative 15 at night to 85 or 90 in there during the day. You want to get it up to where they're thawing out. So that would be my suggestion, is I think you need some sort of white poly. I don't know what you're growing. Obviously, if you're growing zone 2 deciduous plants, that lose their leaves in the wintertime, they're probably going to be things you can put pot to pot and not worry about too much for the wintertime, as long as there's some moisture in the pots when it does thaw out. But most everything else, I think in zone 4A, you're going to want them under some sort of white poly plastic in the wintertime. And you'll see most nurserymen up that far, that's what they're going to be doing in the wintertime. They're going to be packing. They'll have the rows with the hoops and no plastic on them during the summer and everything spaced out. And then the guys will come through and take all the plants and put them into the houses and then put the white poly on them. That's how they overwinter most of that stuff. Let's see. How do we deal with Japanese beetles? We don't really have any. There's 2 or 3 Japanese beetles that I'll see out here during the season, but I've talked about this a lot. We don't have a lot of lawn in this neighborhood, and so there is some across the street from me, and I would imagine that that's full sun turf areas are where you get the most, where most of those grubs are living, is in grassy areas. You'll get some grubs in these types of areas too, in planted beds, but for the most part, they're out in turf areas. They eat the roots on your turf grass, then they come out as Japanese beetles. This person asked if milky spore works. Every single person that I've ever had a response to whether milky spore worked or not was no. There may be somebody watching who's had a good outcome with milky spore. I've been selling that stuff since I was a teenager at Rake and Hoe Garden Center. That's what we were told. Somebody has grubs, sell a milky spore. The other alternative is to use an insecticide on your lawn at some point during the year. Unfortunately, that's going to kill most any insect that's in your turf or in your garden, in the soil there. So I don't know if that's not something I'm going to do, but really getting some shade over your garden and reducing the amount of turf, hopefully throughout your neighborhood. The problem is that it will do you, it's a flying insect, so it will do you no good to do what I've done here. You need cooperation from several other places. But between the shade trees in this neighborhood and far less turf than there probably originally was when all these houses were built, there's a lot less. Okay, this person has a tree-formed heptacodium. 7 sunflower is the common name for heptacodium. How do they naturally grow? They definitely naturally grow as a multi-trunk tree. And so if you've gotten one that was done single trunk, you probably are going to be fighting against it in the future. I've got a single trunk Amelanchier in the front garden, and it's the same thing. It wants to grow as a multi-trunk tree. It's the same thing on crepe myrtles. If you're growing one as a standard or a single trunk, it's always going to be fighting to try to become a multi-trunk. So you're going to have to clean up the suckers down at the base, or just say, okay, no problem, and let a few of those suckers just grow up and be part of the tree. That's up to you in the future. But yes, it wants to grow as a multi-trunk, large shrub or small tree, I should call it. How is our blue spruce? Here it is. It's right next to the camera over here. It looks great. It doesn't grow a whole lot because it's a dwarf, slow-growing blue spruce, and it's probably only about doubled in size in 5 years. But it's doing fine. Yellow jackets. I don't think I've gotten a yellow jacket question in 7 years of doing these Q&As. Maybe I have, and I just didn't answer it because maybe it was asked in some way I couldn't answer it. And then they ask if there's value in the garden. I don't think so. So I like to leave enough of my yard wild. When I had the larger lot, a third of the lot was left wild. Okay, and if there were yellow jackets back in that area, who knows? I don't know. I had left that space for the wild. So I'm not going to go out of my way to go kill yellow jackets in a wooded area or the edge of a wooded area somewhere. but I can't have them in my main garden here, especially inviting people to the open garden. Yellow jackets are just flat out, can be dangerous. I got, when I first got hired at the garden center, I was actually repairing equipment. And during those equipment repairs, they were under a shelter and there was a yellow jacket nest under there that got me good one time. At other times I've been chased around by them, bit a few times, but not as bad as that one particular time. But I think you do have to kill yellow jackets, and it's just whatever wasp spray you want to spray into that hole will kill them. I'm again not big on killing things, but they're flat out dangerous. They're dangerous to a pet. They're dangerous to a child. Dangerous to an older person who, anybody who couldn't scramble away from them very quickly. Very, very dangerous. Okay, but again, if we leave some things wild, we don't have to kill everything. Just when they get up here in some inconvenient space, right? Had to go inside for a minute. Griffin was losing his mind on a neighbor walking down the street. Okay, this person bought flimsy and easily tangled deer netting. Ours seems heavier. What brand is it? I don't know what brand it is, but I have down below these videos in the description of the video, you can go to my Amazon store, and I have that one linked. I don't know if it's still available. I haven't updated my Amazon store in forever. It pays about enough to me not to. I don't think about it, and I'm not going to sit on this channel and hawk things for Amazon all day. So for 2% of a sale or 3% of a sale or even 50% of a sale. I just don't want to hawk things for anyone. But that netting I did have on there on that list. I think it's probably still available, and it is much heavier duty than some of the other newer netting. Unfortunately, when I bought that, it was like $35. This was 7 or 8 years ago, and it's lasted that long. It may last me another 10 years. The last time I looked at it, it was like $90 or $100. So I can see why you ended up buying the flimsy one. It's overpriced at this point, but lots of things have gone up. But I will say, if you spend $100 on a 100-foot roll, it's 7 foot tall, 100 foot long, heavier plastic. If you spend that $100, I've gotten 8 years out of it. So is that worth $100? I mean, like I say, I think I'll get another decade out of it. Let's see. This person has an Edith Bogue magnolia grandiflora and a northern bell magnolia in Chicago, zone 5B, 6A. The plants were grown in northern Ohio, so they're hoping they felt cold all their lives. Will they do okay? The northern bell magnolia, almost certainly, because it's Virginiana, it's probably zone 4 hardy. So I don't worry about that one. But the magnolia grandiflora, if you don't see any of them around you, I don't know. I think you would eventually, it's zone 6 hardy, but I think eventually you would possibly get a winter that could potentially do the Magnolia grandiflora is our evergreen southern magnolia. So I think the Virginiana would probably do fine. I'm not worried about it, and it will probably be pretty deciduous up in your area, more evergreen here in the south. Okay. We're rolling right along. How did we get to 17 this fast? Oh, because I skipped some. Okay, that makes more sense because it didn't make any sense that we were already at 17. Do we chill or buy pre-chilled bulbs? Depends on the fall. So we get our bulbs from Color Blends, as you guys have seen for a couple of years, 3 years or so. If I'm going to be out of town, I will have them chill them and hold them, and chill them while they're doing it. And that would be for me hyacinths and alliums and tulips. The rest of them, I'm not worried about them pre-chilling them. If we're going to be here in September when they start shipping, or October when they're shipping to my area, then it's starting to rain a little bit harder. Then I don't need them to chill them, and I'll chill them in my own refrigerator. So if you're going to be around in the area and it's cheaper to not have somebody chill them, then just do it yourself. It's fine either way. In the chiller in your as long as you got room in your refrigerator. That's obviously an issue as well. But last year I got some pre-chilled because we were out of town for like a month and a half at one stint. This person purchased Leucothoes, and it had 2 plants in the container. A lot of this these days going on. They separated them before planting with high heat. The larger of the two has lost a third of its leaves and it's struggling. How to help it? I think you could tip prune it to make sure it's not trying to actively grow. But if you don't see any new growth on it, then I don't think there's anything you can do to it other than get out of its way. Make sure you're not overdoing it. But if it's got any new growth on it, you could take, just literally the tip. This crepe myrtle right here is a great example. I can just take that tiniest little bit of growth right there out of the top of it, and now it's not trying to get water up to that to grow more leaves in that spot. So that's an alternative. Tip pruning can sometimes be helpful. But again, if it's not growing, if you don't see any new growth on it, it's probably not a whole lot of point to that. But a lot of times it's get out of the way. I mean, I can answer a lot of these questions with, I can tell the amount of worrying, not necessarily this person, but some of the questions sometimes, I can tell the amount of worrying they're doing about it is concerning to me, because sometimes when we worry about something that much, that's when we go out there and we over fertilize it, over cut it, over prune it, over water it, over everything. And we end up loving it to death. Okay. If you plant plants that like moisture in a wet area, like clethra, buttonbush, etc., does planting a mass of them change the overall moisture content in the area? No. Unfortunately, there's no plants that will cure moisture in an area. They weren't trying that. They were actually asking me if then when they planted other things, would it be too dry for those other things if they had mounded them up? No, it's not going to change the moisture in that area. And probably shading the soil that the plants will do may even make it more potentially moist, but those plants will thrive in that space. You've planted the right plant in the right place, but it's not going to cure a problem. The only thing that will change the moisture in that area is a regrading of it, or some sort of French drain, or some sort of mechanical change to it, some sort of physical change to the space. But plants will not dry it up. Maybe seasonally dry it up just a little bit. So if you went some period of time without rain, maybe them using that water, but then when it comes back around to the winter time and they're asleep, it's going to be just as wet as it always was. This person planted azaleas, watered them well, went on vacation, and they got pretty cooked. Anything they can do to help them, how much time to give them before they replace them. As long as they're pliable, meaning you can bend them, branches, and they're not breaking. You can scrape it with your thumb and see that there's green underneath. They'll likely just leaf right back out if given the opportunity. Don't overwater them when they're drop half their leaves. It's really easy. The plant was dry and it shed half its leaves to get itself back in line with how dry it was, and then we come back and go, oh no, I need to water more, and then start watering a plant that's already corrected itself. So that can be damaging. You could potentially prune them if they're trying to put on flower buds for the fall. So these are Encore Azaleas. I'm probably going to say, let's don't let them bloom this fall, and go out there and prune them just a bit, just the tiniest little bit off the ends of each branch. And maybe that will give you some interior growth in it. And we can just sacrifice this fall and get them back in good shape for next year. Okay. I got the blue spruce, I got the yellow jackets. I just skipped weirdly ahead for a second, but we corrected, we self-corrected. Okay, let's go. Third year of a Golden Falls redbud. Why is there green and no longer gold? A lot of mine turn green as well. This new growth from this year, deer have been eating it right here. This new growth from this year is very yellow, but if you look down in here, you see how green it is? I think maybe you can see it. That 100 degrees we had turned it from yellow to green. Literally, 2 days of the open garden, the thing was pretty much solid yellow. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, after the open garden, it was 100 degrees. And by middle of the week, that tree was 70% green. I think it just stressed. It stressed it big time to go to 100 for 3 straight days. The white wedding hydrangeas bloom on old or new wood. So when can you prune them? They bloom on new wood. So in the winter time, we prune ours down at the street to about 18 inches in height. Same as limelight and any of the other hydrangea paniculatas. When is the best time to transplant a Sasanqua camellia in Zone 7B, North Carolina? I did a series. I don't know how old your camellia is, so that would be part of the question. I mean, you could do it If it's only been in the ground for a year or two, you could probably do it any time after it cools off. So September through winter, whenever you wanted to do it. If it's been in the ground a long time, I have 2 separate videos on the channel. One is how to prepare a large plant to be moved. It was me root pruning a camellia. And then how to transplant a camellia was me transplanting a couple months later the root pruned camellia to another location in my old garden. And I did that toward the end of winter, but I did root prune it to prepare it to move. So at some point in the fall, you could root prune it, and then in the late winter, early spring, you could move it. Don't know how old or how big it is. But if it's only been in the ground temporarily, then you just move the thing in the fall and move on. Let's see. This person's propagating their own plants from their garden. Is it better to use several cuttings together for stockier plants? Abelia they just bought has multiple plants in the pot. My book's getting wet. And we just answered that question about Lakotha. I single stuck every plant I ever grew. I did not multi. This is a new phenomenon, fairly new phenomenon. Yes, plants competing against one another in a nursery container are going to grow faster, fuller, but not necessarily better. I would single stick them and use some patience. I think the long-term health of the plant will be better if you did it that way. But you know, the world we're living in now, people are sticking. I've seen people sticking 2 and 3 cuttings per cell, and then I've been in a couple nurseries where they didn't take 3 of those cells and put them in a same pot too. So I was like 9 plants in the pot or 6 plants in the pot. Like, whoa, you know, it's going to grow fast. It's going to, you know, finish quicker for the nurseryman. But I don't want. I want a single plant in the ground if I can have that, and I'd rather wait. How is our Eucomis Sparkling Beauty done? How quickly is it spreading? The clump just gets slightly larger each year. Here you are looking at it right now. It's in full bloom out in the front. Beautiful purple foliage on that. That's a Plant Delights introduction. But it's a slow spreader in my experience with it. I mean, every time it wakes up every year, it's a little wider than it was last year. Maybe another year or two, I'll dig it out and split it. Okay. This person was looking for an ornamental tree with vibrant spring flowers. They're losing their eyesight and want something that's vibrant in the spring, and then has good fall color. We put up the video with 50 small ornamental trees a few weeks back. That may be a video that you want to go over. And I think since then somebody put the plants down at the bottom. I appreciate that when you guys do that. I have not been great about listing the plants down in the description of the video. I realize I'm bad at that. But after I've complete that video, shooting 50 plants and editing it and putting every one of those names on the screen and the zones and everything and getting that video up, a lot of times I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe that thing is behind me. It's good. I hope it's good information. It's a lot of tree choices, but it's a lot of work to get to that moment. So somebody else taking over and doing that part down at the bottom I can't thank you enough. Okay. Well, definitely, dogwoods are going to be showy, and then they're going to have that red fall color. That's something you can see. I think you could, white, shows up pretty good. Sourwood, sassafras, great fall color, decent flowers, yellowwood, especially, and there are pink varieties of that. Stewardia, let's see, our serviceberry, we're not getting many fruit on it, but the flowers are quite showy, and the fall color is unbelievable. That orangey red color, and another great native. Fringe trees should be, they just blow up almost completely white and then have fall color as well. I think the Chinese fringe tree is overall a sturdier tree, although our native fringe tree is fantastic, not bashing it in any way, but I'm just saying that if I was going to plant one tree and I really wanted to enjoy it quickly, a Chinese fringe tree would be a good choice. This is a Chinese fringe tree right here, but a narrow version called Tokyo Tower. Okay. I am in the rain doing this video. I've got 2 more to go. Some of the specialty red buds like Rising Sun, would it be feasible to collect their seeds and grow from seedlings for a new plant? When is the best time to do it. So the seed is on, you know, on the red buds now, are just straight native red bud over there. The seed are on them. I'll wait till they dry out in the fall, and then you can collect that seed. Seed comes up readily. It's a pea. Everything in the pea family produces well, not everything. Most things in the pea family produce really great seeds. You know, the green bean, you know, all the beans that you eat, and then all the legumes. And red buds, no different. Wisteria is in that group as well, and it produces fantastic seeds. That's how they end up everywhere. But that, so you can collect the seed in the fall. You probably sow them in the late winter. They may need some stratification, so you can put them in the refrigerator or leave them on a back porch in a dry envelope or something like that. May be enough to get them to germinate. Will they germinate yellow? Don't know. It's within the realm of some do, some don't. That's how that will work for you. It doesn't always, it's not always going to come up. Those aren't, the hybrids especially aren't going to come up true to seed at all. Okay. Last question for this week. This person wants to replace their arborvitae and leyland hedge with a beech privacy hedge that they saw up at White Flower Farm. We saw that up there last year as well. We are going to be back up at White Flower Farm, and I saw Linda Votter was up there, you know, just like a week or two ago, but we've been planning a trip up to White Flower Farm. I think 2 or 3 weeks from now, we'll be up there to video, and I saw that beech hedge last year. You got to be pretty far north for that, so I don't know where you are in the country. When I go to Europe, I spent some time in Sweden and Denmark and Germany a couple of years ago, and 3 years ago now, and there's beech hedges everywhere, but it's definitely a northern thing. They do work extremely well. They're beautiful. They've got, you know, all these formal gardens kind of hedged off with these beech hedges. It's really quite beautiful, but again, they're in Connecticut is where those are, and from there north, really good candidate for that. Here in our gardens in Raleigh, I don't think you'd see that as often. Plus, we have all these leafy evergreens we can use instead of conifers here. So if you're in the South, I would probably do some sort of narrow leafy evergreen, or maybe a conifer like podocarpus or something like that if you wanted a really formal, you know, walled off, you know, formal hedging. So there you go. Again, new t-shirt will be sometime this week. You can see it first on Instagram, next week on the Q&A, a women's shirt, and then the 4 that we introduced last week. And thank you guys so much for asking questions. You know, just put them down in the comment section below the video. We'll pick from those. Again, eventually we'll have 2 in 1 week. And thanks for watching.